Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from today. Welcome to this Weekly 10 customer webinar looking at hybrid goals, one of our new exciting features within Weekly 10. I am Chris Shenton and I head up the people science team here at Weekly 10, and I'm joined today by our founder and CEO, Andy Roberts, who's going to take you through hybrid goals, our brand new goal setting functionality. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. The session is being recorded. We will be sending out a follow-up email afterwards with the live recording, as well as a couple of PDFs that were useful for when it comes to setting up hybrid goals and other goal setting frameworks. And just to make you aware that there is a Q&A live today. So top of your Teams window, you should see a Q&A button. Please do feel free to drop any questions you have into that box there, and we will answer them at the end. But I'll pass you over to Andy now, who's going to introduce everything that you need to know about hybrid goals.
Great, thanks, Chris. Thanks everybody for joining. So as Chris mentioned, hybrid goals is a new feature within the platform. However, it's actually a combination of two existing features. So our goal framework, which has been within the system now for 4 years, and our OKR framework, which has been with us for around 2.5 years. And hybrid goals is one of the only platforms really on the market where you can utilize a combination of OKRs on goals within the same platform. So we'll take you through a little bit of background on why hybrid goals and why we've introduced them into Weekly 10, and then also talk about how you can get started with them within your platform. Great. So first of all, let's just take a step back and look at the importance of goal setting. And when we talk about goal setting, goals, objectives, OKRs, SMART goals, we're kind of referring to the same thing. But when we look at goal setting, it has some really big impacts, both from a performance and also from an engagement perspective within an organization. So as you'll see here, there's some really interesting statistics around productivity, motivation, and also engagement and alignment. First of all, 59% of employees agree that clear goals have the biggest impact on their productivity. If employees know what's important, they're able to focus and prioritize their time. And prioritization is a really key element of goals and OKRs. It really tells employees what's important for the organization right now. Motivation. 82% of employees agree that their personal motivation increases when goals are set. Obviously, goals are quite synonymous with performance management and performance reviews, but fundamentally, people know that when they have goals set and they're able to have visibility of those goals, they actually feel much more motivated to achieve targets. And finally, when we look at engagement and alignment, and this has become much more a focus of goals since the introduction of OKRs, 52% of employees agree that goals help them improve their commitment and pride in their work. And the alignment aspect of that is really important. If you understand by aligning your goals, by aligning your OKRs to those of the organization, you can see the difference you're making to an organization. And a really strong driver of employee engagement is how aligned people feel to the direction of the organization and how they feel they're contributing to the organization. And that fundamentally is one of the biggest drivers of employee engagement. But that's not just it. There's plenty of other things around quality development, and also, of course, all of these things impact staff retention. So retaining the best employees via some really good, transparent, proactive goal setting is absolutely fundamental. So when we talk about hybrid goals, we're talking about SMART goals and OKRs. So first of all, let's just kind of recap on what SMART goals are. SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, and is simply a way of people remembering how to set goals. And SMART has been the goal framework that's been the default corporate way of setting goals for a couple of decades, really. So when you're thinking about the set and forget goals, where people set goals at the beginning of the year, kind of forget what's happened halfway through, and then at the end of the year realize they've set all these goals at the beginning of the year, they were typically set in a SMART way. And SMART is actually still a very useful way of remembering how to set great goals. And People will often talk about SMART goals as not being as effective as OKRs or as useful as OKRs these days, but fundamentally it's not actually what's being set. It's the process behind reviewing and making sure that goals are front and center moving forward, as opposed to the framework itself. So the SMART framework is still a great tool. It's still a great way of setting specific goals. And we'll talk about the differences really between OKRs and SMART goals shortly. But fundamentally, the SMART framework is still a great way of setting goals. So what does a SMART goal look like? Here's a quick example. If we were going to run a marathon, we might say that my SMART goal is to complete a full marathon in under 4 hours before the end of 2023. Now, the great thing about this is that it's specific, tells us exactly what we're going to do. It's measurable. We've got a marathon and we're also measuring the fact that we're going to do that under 4 hours. Is it achievable? 100%, because we know that people can run a marathon. There's plenty of evidence that people can run a marathon under 4 hours, and it's well known that if we train for 6 to 9 months, we'll be ready for a marathon. We've got friends that have done it. We know that that is certainly an achievable target. It's relevant. You know, I'm looking to stay fit, maybe lose a little bit of weight. It's a great way of focusing where I want to go. So it's a goal which makes sense to me and my lifestyle. And finally, it's time bound. We haven't said we will complete a marathon at some point. We've said by the end of 2023. And all of those 5 things really help us focus on doing the things that will help us reach that goal. We're going to do some training. We're going to make sure we do it in the next period of months. We know that it will take a little bit of time to get up to speed, and we need to do some practice runs, maybe a half marathon. So we're able to plan really well based on the goal that we've set. So SMART goals are a great way of setting those specific, achievable, measurable goals that we might want to set, whether it's in our personal life or whether it's in the workplace. So where do OKRs come from? We do have some content on OKRs within our support pages, support.weekly10.com. And as part of the follow-up, Chris will include a link to our previous webinars around OKRs and how you can use OKRs. But fundamentally, OKRs, objectives and key results. And we'll talk a little bit about an example very shortly. But OKRs really come from a combination of different originating goal setting frameworks, but originally management by objectives back in the 50s. And over time, this process was iterated through KPIs, and eventually something called OKRs was adopted in Intel in the 70s, made famous by Google really only over the last decade. So 2018, Google really started to kind of open source what they were doing around OKRs internally, and that really gave OKRs the real momentum to grow and become actually now the most popular way of setting goals within the Fortune 500. So 81% of Fortune 500 companies use OKRs in some way, shape or form. However, the big challenge with OKRs, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is that they are not the they are not they're not the thing that resolves all your issues when you're looking at goal setting. So there are many things to look at, and just changing framework is not going to address all the issues you've had maybe previously setting goals or getting people to follow goals. There's a lot more to it than that, and hybrid goals actually helps you get to that position. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So OKRs, key thing with OKRs is you have an objective. So rather than the SMART goal that we saw before, which was one specific goal, you have an objective. That objective is designed to be qualitative. So it shouldn't really contain numbers, shouldn't be something that's really specific. It should be aspirational. And it should really be about creating impact and something that's easy to remember. The great thing with OKRs is that they should be very quick and easy to remember the objective, so you know exactly what you want to do. In this case, maybe we want to create an awesome employee onboarding experience. So we're in HR, and really what we want to do is make sure that when our employees come on board, they have a great experience, and that's our objective. So how do we measure whether we've succeeded? Because We don't want it to be subjective that we've created this awesome employee experience. So with our key results, we define what success looks like. So we might say improve our 30-day employee net promoter score from 65 to 70. Increase new hire success rate from 80 to 95%, depending on how we measure that. Start manager and employee check-ins on day one. All three of these things, as you'll see, are quite similar to SMART goals, but what they're doing is they're setting metrics which will help us achieve our objective, which is this awesome employee onboarding experience. So great thing with OKRs is they give us some real great things to target, and then it gives us some metrics, some quantitative metrics that define that success. So they're a great tool for doing that. And what we find with OKRs is they're a fantastic tool at the organization level of an organization. So if you look at we have our weekly 10 OKRs that we set annually, and we iterate them quarterly, and we have 4 OKRs. 4 OKRs, and everybody in the organization knows exactly what the objective of each of those OKRs are, and also how they're impacting those. So they're a really great way. You've got 4 OKRs rather than maybe 10 goals that are trying to represent something similar, but you understand the end objective, not just the metrics. You understand the objective itself. So why hybrid goals then? Well, hybrid goals, as we said before, are a combination of OKRs and SMART goals. And the great thing with hybrid goals is it gives you the flexibility to adopt OKRs where it makes sense, but it also gives you the ability to adopt goals or SMART goals where it makes sense in other areas. So in this example, and we'll go through an example in a moment, you'll see that the challenge with OKRs, as we said before, is that often a lot of organizations take OKRs and say, we've got to rip away all of our goal setting frameworks at the moment because everybody says we should be using OKRs. There's an all or nothing approach. And the challenge there, as it says in point 2 here, is that it can be quite difficult to make that major change across an entire organization. It's a paradigm shift. And we often see some great results from management teams adopting OKRs. But then the challenge is, how do you push that all the way through the organization? If you've got an organization of thousands of people, that can be a real challenge. So often OKR examples are given of organizations that only have tens or maybe 100 or 200 people. And it's much more achievable to make sure that people have the training and the understanding of OKRs in those organizations. As soon as you try and scale that more widely across an enterprise, that becomes more difficult because you're having to make sure that that training penetrates throughout the entire organization and that people get the paradigm shift from SMART goals to OKRs. Hybrid goals gives you the balance. Thirdly, employees can find writing personal OKRs quite tricky. A lot of the examples you will see, certainly in business life, are quite difficult for people to come up with their own individual personal OKRs. If you're setting team, department, maybe organization OKRs, it's a little bit simpler. You know what that strategic direction is. But as soon as it comes down to Chris in people science, or it comes down to myself, you've then got to think about your own individual objectives rather than just maybe some of those activities and some of those targets that you have. So hybrid really helps. And finally, hybrid goals maximizes the impact and flexibility. So rather than spending a 12-month project trying to implement OKRs throughout the organization, you can get started with the OKRs day one, but then also allow people to use those SMART goals at those lower levels. And we'll show how that works when we go into the example. So rather than just give you a boring old example from the workplace, we thought we'd go slightly intergalactic and go for a Star Wars example. So the organization level, let's flip over to the dark side. What is the Empire's objective? Well, we could give them an objective to rule the galaxy. And what would success look like? Well, it would be reducing Jedi numbers to 0, because that pretty much means that we will be ruling the galaxy. Increase stormtrooper numbers to 90,000, and then destroy 2 planets in Q3. All of those seem quite stretched targets, but they would certainly result in us achieving our objective of ruling the galaxy. Now, the challenge then is if you were to go down to a lower level and let's say go down to an individual stormtrooper, it becomes a little bit more challenging as to what your objective will be. You can't all be ruling the galaxy as your objective. You need something which contributes to that goal. And often within OKRs, we talk about activities. So you have your OKR, but actually typically as you get down to lower levels, you need activities that are going to help turn the dial towards those objectives. And that's where SMART goals come in to be pretty handy. So if we went down to the stormtrooper level, we can actually set a goal, maybe at a team level, maybe at an individual level, to increase marksmanship accuracy by 10% within the next 6 months by attending training sessions and practicing regularly at the shooting range. We know that if we do this, it doesn't guarantee that we'll reach our objective and we'll meet our key results, but we know that it is likely to turn the dial. It's likely to turn it in our favor. So often your team and personal goals can really help define the short and medium term activities that are required that will help you reach those higher level department and organization level goals. And that's a great way of looking at hybrid goals. Think about those strategic directional objectives and OKRs, possibly at organization department level. And then when you come down to team and personal level, you can use the goal setting framework. And the great thing about using hybrid goals is you can set that alignment between goal and through to objectives. So that's a little bit of background on hybrid goals and how they're intending to work. What we'll now do is go into Weekly 10 and show you how they work in practice. Now, to use hybrid goals, you can access hybrid goals and the settings for hybrid goals from your organization settings. So if you actually go into organization settings, you are able to select the specific levels that you want to use different goals. So you can set organization, department, team, and personal level. So by default, your setup will either be goals or OKRs in your system. You can flip them to all OKRs or all goals, and then you can go down to these individual levels and settings. If you have any questions around that or need some support, you can reach out to your customer success partner, or as I said, you just go to organization settings and you'll be able to access the settings from there. Now, once you have that set up, in this case, I've set up my my OKR levels to be organization department and then have personal team and team and personal level goals. And that is typically what we're seeing with clients. Initially, they're setting out with organization and possibly department level OKRs and then using goals at those lower levels. And that can be a really effective way of getting started with the system. So if I go into organization, and this is the same within Teams or within our web versions, you will see that I've gone in and I've got my organization OKRs. I've got two OKRs. One is deliver on projects, one is grow our business. And you can see we've got 2 key results underneath, and then 3 key results underneath our grow our business here as well. And you'll see if I go to that organization level, I can click add new OKR, I can add my title, and I can add my individual key results. So great. So I can set my OKRs as I would expect. Now, if we go down to department level, it will be the same. We've got those OKRs that we can set. So I go to department. You can very easily see I can go to HR, click add OKR, and we can go in and add an OKR at this level. So let's say, for example, let's maybe just set an OKR at the department level, and let's say we want to help the organization to grow our business. And to grow our business, we are going to have to focus on recruitment. So I'm going to set an OKR which focuses on that. So increase the recruitment and onboarding of new talent to support organizational growth. And then I'm going to add some key results. So let's say, for example, we want to decrease the time to hire by 20%. So I'm going to set my baseline to 0 and my target to 20. Okay, and we're able to create that. So just give me one moment. Once we've created our our OKR, it will appear within the system. So you can select your responsible person, of course, and set your OKR. So once you set that OKR, what you're doing is you're creating that alignment back up to growing our business. Now, if I'm an individual member of the team, of course, I can also set my own personal goals. So you'll see as soon as I go into personal, you'll see I now have the option to add a goal as opposed to an OKR. But even so, underneath my parent goals, you will see listed any OKRs that are available at the department level or at the organization level. So I can very easily set a goal, for example, here, which is around growing our business. So improve our recruitment process, reduce time to recruit, for example. In this case, I'm going to set it to, let's say, time to recruit is 90 days on average at the moment. We want to make that 60. Click save. And you'll now see I've added my goal, which is a goal setting framework, and grow our business is an OKR. So I can click on that and I can see up to the OKR. So what I've been able to do here is, rather than have to come up with maybe a complex OKR, thinking about what the objective is, thinking about those key results, there's actually one thing that I'm going to be responsible for, and that's improving our recruitment process, which is to reduce the average time to recruit. And you know, that's my most important goal. And maybe I've got a couple of other goals, but they're quite specific goals. Otherwise, I'd need to be creating an OKR. I'd need to be thinking about how I create the OKR in a way which is OKR-like and works in the fact that OKRs should really be based on output and achievement. And actually, what I want to do is I really just want to track how we're doing with our recruitment process. But at the same time, I'm able to link that back up to our OKR at the top level and see that relationship between what I'm doing and the organization's objectives and OKRs. And that's it. That's hybrid goals. It's as simple as that. With hybrid goals, depending on the level you go into, whether it's personal, whether it's department, organization, you will get the different options. You can clearly see here I've got the ability to add a goal, which gives me the smart template. If I click on add OKR, it's giving me the OKR template. But all of these operate together. So you can align between goals and OKRs to goals, which gives you that optimum flexibility between those different goal setting frameworks. And you'll know that the RAG status for OKRs is calculated slightly differently. They're intended to be stretch targets, and SMART goals are really intended to be achieved to 100%. So you still benefit from the way in which the different paradigms work between goals and between OKRs. Again, I've shown you in the web version, but of course it's exactly the same within Microsoft Teams. So you'll see here I've got add goal, add OKR, all available directly through here as you use the Teams app and how you use your goal setting at the moment. Okay, so with that, we will just go back to the presentation and open up for any questions. So Chris is going to facilitate the questions coming in. If you do have any questions, there is the little questions screen within the webinar panel. So I'll hand over to Chris and we'll see if there's any questions coming in.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for that session. Really interesting. Great to see hybrid goals up and running. A couple of questions have come in, but as Andy says, guys, if you want to drop any others into the chat, then please do so. The first question came up a couple of times is this available now? So I'll pass that back on to you, Andy, there before I put my foot in it and say the wrong thing.
So hybrid goals is available right away. It's not switched on by default. So the only way to switch it on is via that organization administration screen. So you need to be an admin. You go in settings, organization settings, and then go down and go into the goals and OKRs section, and you're able to specify for each level what framework you would like to use. So whether it's OKRs or goals. If you don't specify anything, it will fall back to the default for your organization, which is either goals or OKRs. If you do need support, just reach out to your customer success partner or just raise a ticket at support.weekly10.com and we will help you out and make sure you're up and running with hybrid goals.
Great. Second question, I mean, you've just touched on it actually, but somebody asking, in your example, you've shown that OKRs are at organization and department level and SMART goals at team and personal. Is that best practice, or can we do things like OKRs at team level, etc.?
Yeah, it's really down to the organization. The sweet spot we've seen with most people who've been using hybrid goals is organization, department or OKRs, and goals are used at personal level. The team level is really down to the maturity of that team and whether you feel as though OKRs are going to work. The one thing with OKRs and if you read up on OKRs, you read some of our support material, OKRs work best when they are something which is public, which is shared, which is really visible. And sometimes at a personal level, you don't necessarily want the visibility across the whole organization. And the default setting within Weekly 10 is that OKRs are public, although you can make them private, and that goals are private, you can make them public. And that really suits the way in which the two frameworks are designed to work. OKRs are designed for full transparency, whereas goals really are designed for the scope of the people who are working on those goals. The other flip side there is that OKRs typically are not synonymous with performance reviews. So if you're looking at individual performance, goals are often a better way of measuring achievement, as opposed to OKRs, which are much better at setting those stretch targets and making something visible and something which people can get behind. So typically, especially if you're starting your journey with OKRs now, we'd say get started at organization level, then maybe look at bringing that down to department level when you're ready. And then it may be that you want to leave goals still at team and personal level. Again, if you want some advice on rollout, we've got plenty of experience and we've done many workshops. We can do customized workshops for OKRs and hybrid goals. Do reach out to your customer success partner and we'll support you in that journey.
Great. Thank you very much, Andy. And one last question, actually. Yep, it's still there. So we're not currently using goals and don't have access. How do we get access to goals? It's an important question.
Great question. So goals within Weekly 10 are part of the Momentum package. So Momentum is our top level package, which is designed for engagement and performance management. If you haven't got goals enabled, it will be one of two things. It will either be that you're on our Connect Squared package, which is really designed purely around check-ins and engagement, and you don't have Momentum, or you have Momentum and you've got goals switched off. So once you go into your account, you should be able to work out if you're on Connect Squared or Momentum. If you're on Connect Squared and you want to try out goals or OKRs, just reach out to your CSP or upgrade your account to Momentum. But we're certainly happy to provide free trials of the goal setting framework and the functionalities available in Momentum. Secondly, if you do have Momentum, it will be because goals are switched off. So just go to your settings, check that goals are enabled, and then once they're enabled, you'll have access and be able to get started with them.
Great, thanks for that, Andy. That seems to be the end of the questions. So we'll just wrap up now, guys. If anything does drop in, we might just have time to squeeze one in. But thank you very much for joining us today. Hopefully you all found that really useful. As Andy's mentioned, and as I mentioned at the start, we're going to follow up with an email out probably most likely tomorrow, which will have a recording of this session, and it also have a few links out to things like our previous OKR webinars, our support pages around hybrid goals, and other useful resources and links. But no other Q&A have come in now, so I think we can call it there, guys, and everyone can go on and enjoy the rest of their day. Thank you very much, Andy, once again for giving up your time today, and thank you to everyone for joining us. See you all soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye.